2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the happy hour. This is a different opening on purpose because even though we will turn it into a happy hour, there's some very serious things going on in the world. And during the night, I just didn't feel like starting off with my usual attempts, very poor attempts at poetry. You know what the show is about. Today is going to be, it's going to turn you happy because of our guests. But the news that I have to start with is simply now is the time for you to become very aware of this ministry, Acts Ministry, proven now in its 27th year, proven to be able to work across denominational lines.
I know, that's right.
Proven to be able to work with independent ministers and ministries.
That's right.
Proven that it has been able to do this on a very, very, very small budget, less than $30,000 a year, reaching millions of people. But you may say, well, so what? Well, here's what the so what. For the first time, some people became very aware of autism as a serious problem that's affecting millions of Americans. And many of them are receiving help because of Acts Ministry and Acts Media Group. We hear a lot of stuff about veterans. You can go to a show in Branson, which is south of us, for those of you who aren't aware of where we are, in Springfield, Missouri, south of us, one of the entertainment capitals of the world, Branson, Missouri. Go to a show. They'll have veterans stand up to be recognized. That's pretty cheap. Let's let the rubber meet the road. It's one thing to say to a veteran, thanks for your service, or to applaud in a Branson show when they stand up. It's another thing to put the pedal to the metal and do something. Acts Media Group, Acts Ministry through Acts Media Group, is doing something about veterans, and you need to know about it. Veterans need to know about it. Acts Media Group does something about the handicap. It isn't just a case of somebody sending $19 a month, which, by the way, is a pretty clever marketing ploy because instead of $20, 19 sounds a lot cheaper. And so everybody and his aunt and uncle, niece and nephew, in-law and outlaw is advertising, send $19 a month. Acts Ministry through Acts Media Group and Acts Media Group through Acts Ministry, working together, they are doing something very solid concerning the handicap. How many ministries do you know that have made it possible for a man, I think in his 60s, who was on dialysis for 11 years because of kidneys that were of no use to him, to get a kidney transplant? Well, this ministry made that possible. The list goes on and on and on, that Acts Ministry does indeed serve where needed by doing the right thing. This is not a preaching show. This is not a preaching session, and this is not a time for name calling. I'm just simply wanting to tell you that there's something very serious going on in our world, and while there are churches that have multi-million-dollar debts, and there are televangelists who are raising multiple millions, like $150 to $250 million a year, this ministry, you can see, if you want to see what it's doing, you can see it. You can read about it. And you can help support it. Telethon is this month, the 28th and 29th. What if it only touches one handicapped person, or one parent of an autistic child, or one person who needs a kidney transplant? What if it only touches one veteran? What if? It's worth it. It's worth it. We don't get paid for doing the happy hour, and don't plan on being paid for it. But we will turn this solemn news into a happy hour, I guarantee you. We didn't have our theme music. We didn't have my rhymes, but it's going to be a happy hour, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of trouble right now with Turkey and the Kurds and the Syrians and the Russians now in place there. Lots of problems. A ceasefire yesterday, broken this morning. Latest news.
Oh, wow.
Now, also, there's some other problems in the air that will help us. If we can have a bigger, better website, will help us with Acts Television Network to continue doing what we're doing in spite of Christian persecution. Those of you who think Christians aren't being persecuted, you're not paying attention to what's going on in the world.
That's right.
I have a little evidence here, several pages that I printed off. Won't use them all, but I can tell you this. Christian persecution is not a new thing, except too few people are aware that it's still happening. Have we already forgotten the Christian men who had their throats cut and their heads cut off along a beach done by radical Islamists? Have we already forgotten that? Have we forgotten that Christians are currently being martyred around the world? Even in this country, we've had some shootings in churches. You can't be safe going to church. Folks, we need this voice, because this is the voice of the nonprofits who will get this work done. I read some of the history of Christian persecution. The mother country of our America does not have a clean slate historically. Britain's William Laud had spies listen to pastors' sermons, see if they said anything against the king's ordinances. We still have the Johnson Amendment that makes it illegal for me to endorse from the pulpit a political candidate. If they did say anything against the king, they were arrested. No witnesses were allowed when they had these hearings. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
We've got some closed-door hearings going on right now. Though started with the intention to cut through the red tape of bureaucracy, Britain's Court of Star Chamber usurped power. Do we see any usurpation of power now by anti-Christian forces in this country? I think so. It became a political weapon for auditing, intimidating, and punishing opponents to the king's policies. Similar to modern-day IRS audits or partisan secret special counsel investigations. Individuals were subject to hostile questioning, and if they gave unsatisfactory answers, they were charged with perjury. Sound familiar? The abuses of England's Star Chamber led America's founders to include the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. I guarantee you, you could probably interview 100 people on the streets of Springfield, Missouri today, and you would be lucky to find one who knows what the Fifth Amendment is to the Constitution. One reason why we are fast becoming a nation of no law is because people don't know the law for their own protection. The Fifth Amendment is one reason why they have to read you your rights if they come to arrest you. They have to go through proper procedures. It's in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Notoriously based in favor of the king, the Star Chamber was used in 1937 by William Laud to punish religious dissenter William Prynne, who objected to the state's control over religious matters. William Prynne was tied to a pillory, that's a post, a public pillory, out in public, a post, where, get this, he had his ears cut off, and with a hot iron was branded on his cheeks with letters SL. It stood for seditious libel. But Prynne, being a Christian, called it the sign of Laud. William Laud approved of the, Prynne called the sign of Laud. William Laud, who did this, approved of the Star's Chamber sentencing of dissenting pastor Henry Burton for his so-called seditious sermons, resulting in his ears cut off and imprisonment. Folks, I could go on and on and on, but there's some things happening in our world today that are very similar. My whole point is, I also have here the program, which I can't go through, of the telethon. I'm asking you to pay attention. October 28 and 29, from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, to all the activities, the causes that will be lifted up, and your opportunity to be supportive of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group. I would be remiss if I did not say to you, not only is money needed, but as the founder of Acts Ministry, Nancy and I, we know the need for prayer.
I know that's right.
Power of prayer.
Ooh.
Now, because I've said all of that, it's time for us to turn this into the happy hour. And to begin with, we hear our theme music. Yeah, there we go. Yes, now we know it's the happy hour, and our very special guest, this is about the third time that he's been with us. He'll be with us many more times if Nancy and I have our way about it, and I know we'll have his wife Becky's cooperation. Anyway, it's Dr. Philip Lloyd. He is the owner and founder of Cherry Health Center here in Springfield, but more than that, this man is a happy Christian. He is a very active Christian, and he's got a great testimony, and we want to hear about it now because, Dr. Phil, I know you went on another big, long journey not long ago, did you not?
Yeah, that was my third year. I did it in 2017, 18, and we did it again this year, but went to the John Muir Trail, which is the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. And it starts in the Little Yosemite Valley and ends on the highest peak in the continental United States of Mount Whitney, which is about 220 miles hike. Everything on your back, and so it's probably the most challenging and probably the most beautiful hike in the continental United States. I mean, you see God in His creation, mm-hmm. And there was, and I don't know if I discussed it last time. I think we did. Didn't we discuss that last time?
About your other trip.
Right.
Since you were here last time, you've been on this trip.
Yeah.
The time before, you had quite an experience with the Holy Spirit. You felt the wind of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, yeah.
What happened this time?
Well, it was fantastic. Met a lot of good people. It wasn't the same spiritual experience. Sometimes you expect. I was looking and it wasn't quite the same. It was quick and fast, and I seen His glory, but I didn't have that mountaintop experience like I did last time, and that's okay. Every time I come to church, you don't need to. It doesn't happen every time you go to church. You don't get saved every week.
Some people try.
But it was a glorious time, and it was a time of refreshing of the spirit and cleansing of myself, but since that last trip when I was touched almost 2 years ago, I mean, my life has changed, and we changed the theme of the office when we came back from that last trip to giving. Our motto is to give life, light, and hope to the people suffering in Springfield. Everybody knows that in my office. They see it. They see it coming out of me. And it's just, I'm a changed man from that. And we have now, I've been called, I knew I was called to do something with this last third of my life because I've built my kingdom, first 2/3 of my life. And, I had God in there, but I was not being led by the Spirit. I was being led by my body and my soul more than the Spirit. Now I've kind of turned that triangle upside down, and now feel like I'm putting the Spirit above my soul and my body to guide me. And one of the things I think I'm called to do in this last third of my life is to build His kingdom. And I know that my kingdom will be taken care of. I should have learned that when I was 10, but it took me to 55 to really learn, because I was, as a young man, you're trying to make your way and trying to, build your family and build your business, and, God was in it, but, He was not truly... I was not truly Spirit-led, if you will. And that's just a maturing process. Some get it young. It took me a while. I was always Christian, don't get me wrong. But this last third of my life, I've been blessed in so many ways that it's now I know that I've been called to build the kingdom.
I think you finally got it right side up.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but be reminded of something I've taught along the years, that man, God is Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we're in the image of God, which means we are a tripartite person.
Exactly right.
We have a soul, we have a body, and we have a spirit.
Yeah, the Star of David.
Yeah, and in God, in the Garden of Eden, before the serpent showed up, Satan, man lived the spirit man, and had fellowship with God. The body was at the bottom of the priorities. The soul was in the middle. Well, when Satan came along and Adam and Eve sinned, it got reversed. Mm-hmm. Suddenly they became more aware of their bodies, realized they were naked. The soul was still in the middle. The spirit was down. Mm-hmm. So you got it right side up now. Yeah. You got the spirit in as a priority.
You look at the Star of David, the symbol of Israel, and one of those triangles is made up of two triangles. Mm-hmm. One is the triune God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The other triangle is us. We are triune also. Mm-hmm. We are spirit, body, and soul. And most of us, many of us, live with the soul at the top of that triangle. Sure. That controls our body and our spirit. But what we need to do is flip that, put the spirit and cause our bodies and our souls to be submitted to the spirit.
Yes.
And that's been a revelation in my life. Mm-hmm. And that's where that life, light, and soul comes from. My goal is not to decrease my sin or not to be more obedient. My purpose is to fill myself with light. Jesus is the Word, and He is the light of the world, and God's kingdom is a kingdom of light. And so I'm to fill myself with light and let that funnel through me. And I pray, God, give me greater influence, increase my borders, because as He fills me with my light, my borders shall increase as I start affecting more and more people's lives around me.
That's right.
And there's no such thing, to butt in, there's no such thing as, well, I've used up all He's given me. No. He is constantly infilling.
Oh, yeah.
And helping with every bare hair, insignificant or big thing.
Oh, yeah.
I told you it's a happy hour.
Yeah. One of the things that this thing has led me to, and I feel like I'm being called to, is to help homeless and trafficked teenagers. Turns out Springfield, Greene County, is one of the number one areas in the country for homeless and trafficked teenagers. We are 8 hours, so I'm told, from 8 of the 11 international airports from this area. A child can be taken, and these are American kids. We're not talking about foreign nationals that are funneled through. These are American kids that come up missing every day, all the time, and they're trafficked. If you take one child, if you traffic that child, a person can make $200,000 to $300,000 a year on one child. It is big business, and people will court these kids for months and months to get them into that. And then, of course, they get them on meth and drugs that makes them do things that they would never do. And so I feel I am called. So I hooked up with Rare Breed. Rare Breed is a organization off the kitchen, and they minister to, or I shouldn't say minister, they reach out to these kids, and they perform services and allow them to get connected. I went down there and took a tour, and I was looking for gaps and they take government funding, and so they are not allowed to basically preach the gospel. And so I went down there and was touring and looking for gaps. Where can I fill in? What can I do? Where can I? And I realized they're not preaching the gospel. And they say all the kids know where they're at, and they come to them, but they don't go out into, and there's a large homeless population. They live in the tunnels and sewers around here. There's apparently a shelter area where they go, and it's a big community. And so we're looking at possibility of going out there. And I thought of, just in my prayer time, I thought, what if we just go out there with hundreds of Snickers bars and bag loads of underwear and socks and things, and we start giving out these candy bars and gather people around us and just start preaching the gospel and start ministering to the kids. And of the people that are out there, some are the elect. before they created this earth, God knew who they were, and they knew who, and
right.
they're His elect. And
That's
if I
right.
call, as in Jesus, because I am Jesus on this earth, and so are you.
That's
We're
right.
all called to be Jesus. And if I call out, I as a shepherd, we're all shepherds. If I call out, the sheep will hear my name. They'll know my voice, and they'll come to me. So I go out there and call out His name, and the elect will hear His voice, the Holy Spirit, His Spirit in me, and respond. So I'm that's kind of where I'm thinking, and I'm praying. I keep praying for God's visions and dreams of what I'm supposed to do, and it's slowly becoming more and more clear. And I'm trying to garner a resource. One of the things we're doing right now, we're doing trunk or treat on October 26th out at the office. People will come. We have bounce houses, and we have superheroes there. We have tons of candy, and it's going to be October 26th, 5 to 7. We're going to have free hot dogs, cotton candy, popcorn, drinks, chips, and we're asking people if they give a $2 donation. If they don't have $1, we'll give them it all to them. But if they would throw $2 in the little donation pile, 100% of it is going to go to them. We're also, if a person comes in and they call in and want to become a new patient, for a minimum of $5, we'd love you to give $200. But if you give a minimum of $500, we'll look at one area.
Minimum $5.
Yeah, minimum $5. Examine X-rays, and all that would go to Rare Breed. And so we're looking at ways we can, pump funds into there. But we really want to see how God can reach them with the gospel. And if you'll pray for me for visions and dreams of what God would bring and how, because I want to be a mighty man of God. I want to change the world. I want to change the world for these kids and have Jesus reach His hand out and grab a hold of a child. Because you can think of a kid, his daddy left for somebody he thinks is better. Mom gets in trouble with another man. Drugs enter the picture, and all of a sudden here's a 15, 16-year-old kid that has all the things he needs, but things just went haywire, and he finds himself in this situation. Can God reach out and grab this kid without much resource,
Yes.
and that they're not terribly damaged, and we could bring them and change? Because if you change that life, a couple hundred years from now, his family and his family's family, there's hundreds of Christians. There's hundreds. You've changed the world, and through these kids, and I just can't see how you couldn't want to touch these lives. If you have a kid, you look in that kid's eyes, and there's a kid just like him out there, and he thinks nobody loves him. And there's a God in heaven that loves him. If we can reach out to those kids and let them know that I'm 55 years old. If I didn't think my wife loved me or my parents loved me, my kid, I'd sit there and bawl right now. But these kids have become tough, and they've had to, because a little story. I was talking to them down there. A family was going through Arkansas, and they had one mentally disabled child. The younger one and the 15-year-old went into the store. The younger one came out, and they left. And they left that kid there, that 15-year-old mentally disabled kid there, and just abandoned him. And he's at Rare Breed right now. And you see that all the time in people. And if we can reach out to these kids and show them the love of Christ, we could change the world.
There's 2 or 3 things I want to throw in there, Dr. Phil. One is what you're talking about, I know, has the ear of Dr. Jim Winey, the president of Acts Ministry, because he and his wife worked with autistic children, and then with the parents of autistic children, and with other handicapped. Plus, they had a ministry in downtown Kansas City. In the wintertime, they would take neck scarves, and pass around. He told a story about that at our banquet this last summer at the Access banquet. But also, it brought to mind that one of the men who was a graduate of my old seminary in Kansas City, who was the retired chief of police of Kansas City, he had a ministry among the homeless in downtown Kansas City. And it's still going on to this day, even though he's now deceased. You were mentioning to us prior to the show, to Nancy and me, about socks and underwear and so forth that's needed. I remember our guy, Charlie Key, talking about the homeless in downtown Kansas City had that need. You'll like this story. the city council of Kansas City, apparently, the way I heard it from Charlie, they were going to ban the homeless. They were sleeping in the alleys. Charlie knew where they all were. In fact, they had what they called a prayer walk, and visitors to Kansas City could go downtown toward Grand Avenue, Temple, Methodist Church, and so forth, and they could join this prayer walk led by a homeless person, and they'd go around through all the places where the homeless slept and pray. But the city council wanted to move them out. And Charlie took the homeless people. They went out on the street and they picked up nails, screws, pieces of glass, anything that could harm a vehicle's tires back in those days. And they put them in a great big glass pickle jar, one of those like you see in a general store, filled it up. And they took it to their church, put it on the altar, and made an offering of it, and prayed, and then took that with Charlie's connection of being a retired deputy chief of police to the city council meetings, and they set it on the council table, that big jar, and said, this is what the homeless have done for downtown Kansas City. We wonder how many ladies did not have a tire punctured and a flat tire downtown. It was quite a graphic lesson. They didn't move the homeless out. The other story that came to my mind, you've had in essence, a different kind of mountaintop experience than what you had that you reported last time. This is where on this occasion, it's where you get this inspiration and motivation to do something about these homeless kids in Springfield. 50 years ago, I was a part of of youth counselors at a youth camp, a church camp. And I don't know, very few people know that the highest place in Missouri is down in Iron County. It's a mountain called Mount Pilot. And we trekked all the way up to the top of that mountain. And you get up there, there's no trees. I mean, it's just big old boulders, rocks. And I was having a back problem. But I got up there, and instead of staying there was one girl who was probably 14 years old at the time. So now if she's alive, she'd be 64. She didn't want to come off the mountain. She found herself a little crevice up there and stayed listening to God. With my bad back, I'm helped down the mountain by a nurse. I count that a missed opportunity. I wonder, she'd be a 64-year-old woman now if she has a ministry. So what you're talking about here with these kids at Rare Breed, no missed opportunities. You're going to get in there and do something.
Yeah, we're just hoping to do something, and we don't know what it is. I just keep asking God for dreams and visions. I keep exploring and moving forward on this, and not knowing what exactly He's called me to do. But this is our first step to bring these kids. And again, on October 26th, if they want to come, donate money, they can stop by the office, donate money. 100% will go, and we're donating about $5,000 in candy and all these things, and not asking for anything, but we want to give 100% back to that. And eventually we may be thinking about a nonprofit to where we can actually garner resources and supply needs and just show the love of Christ to these kids. And so I think that's a missing gap for a lot of these kids.
It is. And by the way, Acts Ministry does have covering it provides for other religious nonprofits and has for years and years, ever since we started Acts Ministry over 26 years ago. So you might want to sometime visit with Dr. Wining about a connection. There is power in connection. That's why we are trans-denominational, to connect. In true unity, there is a tremendous amount of power. In addition to your recent journey and your outreach that you have in mind for these homeless kids, I have to tell you personally that I admire what happens when you walk into Cherry Health Center, because it is not the usual medical world. Nancy and I was a patient there, by the way. I don't know if you remember that. Well, you met, but I got my back fixed and learned a lot. But then Nancy and I came to one of your seminars, and we listened to you, and all you did really, you talked more about Jesus than you did stem cell therapy, and I just loved it. And to me, that's, you see, the first thing.
I think that's the light. You pour the light in, and the light is going to come out.
That's right.
And that's just, I mean, if you're in the Word, if you're in the light, it's going to spill out over you, and it's going to come out of you. And that's my prayer continually, is fill me with the light and increase my influence and let it come out. And that's what we all are called to be as Christians.
That's right, exactly.
You know, we're not called to keep it to ourselves, you know. That little song, you know, about the little candle. And
this little light of mine, I don't let it shine. You know, I think about how these things will be like rivers of living water flowing from the innermost being, flowing out. And when you're full of Jesus, no matter what you're doing, how secular it may seem on the surface, Jesus spills out when you're full of Jesus. And when we first started Acts Ministry, the first intent was to reach independent ministers and churches and ministries, to get them to work together and to see the value of some denominations, to be able to reach across denominational lines. The second thing was to reach the secular marketplace with the gospel. And of course, that's what Acts Media Group does, and that's what you do. Every day at Cherry Health Center, you're reaching the secular marketplace. Nancy and I drive by there several times a week. There's always cars in the parking lot, always.
God definitely has blessed us.
I've never seen an empty parking lot.
Well, and it seems like the more that we're giving, and you know, and I'll admit something here, is we've always given money to the church, but I wouldn't call it a true tithe. I wasn't stickler over the 10%. I think we gave more money than most, but we never really, I mean, we didn't, but in this last year, I looked at my best year I ever had, and I said, okay, I'm going to give 10% plus on top of that, and with expectation. And so I did get on my bill pay, and I said, okay, we're going to send this money to the church without, even if I'm on vacation, it still goes. You know how you do that. You know, many of us like, oh, I'm on vacation, I don't get my tithe this week or whatever. but it went out. And I can tell you, with less advertising dollars, we've gotten more calls. The office has flowed so much better. And I tell all the employees, no, I can't explain it. This is what happened. But I cannot explain why the blessing has been poured out upon us. And no, that's why I'm inspired to now give more offerings to this ministry that I'm going to be concentrating on. It's like, you know, and all my employees know, it's like, what are you doing? It's kind of crazy. It's like, I just don't think I can outgive him. I think the resources, as I push forward, the resources are going to show up, and things are going to happen, and we're all going to be in awe of what God is doing and how the resources just start showing up. And Acts Ministry, if you're doing the will of God and you're doing the commission of God, money should not be a worry.
It's going to flow.
It should flow.
Because we're bringing attention to the people that God is in this. I term it this way. It's a sacred ministry that reaches the secular world. It really does. Because anyone that belongs to God is on God's side. They're over in sacred territory. You know, it's a spiritual realm. By the way, the blessing of God makes one rich, is what Scripture says. And I'm a firm believer in Malachi 3. There are people who say, well, tithing is Old Testament. No, Jesus even talked about the Pharisees, how they were tithing. And he said, that you ought to do. That's coming from Jesus himself. And there wasn't a greater Old Testament, New Testament person on the earth than Jesus of Nazareth. So I've always told people there are tithes, that's first. Then there's offerings. If you want your offerings to count, You need to tithe first, then offerings, then alms, which is giving to the poor. You're getting it in right order, my friend. Tithes, offerings, and the alms that you, when you're reaching out to these homeless kids. That's proper. And God's blessings on you will make one rich.
Right.
So I hope you're ready for that.
Well, it was just, it took me 55 years old to, and it's not too late for any of us.
Oh, no, I
And-
certainly
and
hope not.
The layers of that onion keep getting peeled away, and we keep learning. And until the day I die, I think he's going to be teaching me, and I'm going to learn new things each week, each day. And as I open this, and so is, I'm an example. I came from a broken home and many things of my life, but it's never too late for us.
No.
It
no.
doesn't matter if you're 50, doesn't matter if you're 60. God loves you. He can use you. He can, and we're just in awe.
I want to give some of you some encouragement. Tell somebody, because most of the people watching us are a lot younger than I am, I'm sure.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Most people are a lot younger than I am. But listen, you younger ones, tell the old person you know that it's not over. I'm
that's
84, and it's not over.
I don't think there's a retirement age for Christians.
No, but we had some preachers who retired. But by the way, let's see, I'm 84, and we put in 26 years here. That's 8 from... I was 58 years old when Nancy and I started Acts Ministry.
Oh, is that right? That's great.
How about that?
That's neat. Whoa, doggies. There is absolutely no being too old
No.
to start with God in any way, shape, or form. Because if you think you're too old, then you have just put the world and the body first, you might say, and the mind that really isn't looking to Jesus. But when when you've got Jesus and the Holy Spirit, my goodness gracious, you can go on and on and on. You can just pass from this life smack dab right into heaven. Whoa, it's seamless, boy and how. And
That's
that's
what
the way
Moses
God
did.
can be. Yes.
Moses did it at 120. Of course,
Oh.
I like to remind people that even though God told us in Genesis 6 that man's years would be 120, and Moses, as you know, walked to his own funeral at 120.
That's right.
With the gait of a young man, his eyes had
Yes.
not grown dim. However, Caleb, one of the spies sent into the promised land, he was 80. He came out and he said, "We are well able to take the land because I can hold a sword in my good right hand." Because of his optimistic outlook, he lived to be 130. I mean, I think some people just resign themselves to an early death when it's not necessary. So for those of you who are younger, yesterday I was your age, so guess how old you'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll be my age. Yesterday I was your age. Really? It's just how fast it goes. So it's not over. It's just not over. Now, this leads me into medical care, and without calling any names, I'll sound a little bit political here because there's a lot of discussion about Medicare, Medicare for all. And I saw the stats on it yesterday. The political candidates who are espousing Medicare for all are failing to really be specific where they're going to get the money. $3 trillion, that's with a T, $3 trillion a year. And it shows that if they took all the income of every person who makes at least $200,000 a year, all the income above that, they're still only raising less than $2 trillion.
Right.
And then they take another bunch, and there's no way, absolutely no way, fiscally, that they can raise $3 trillion every year, year after year after year, which will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're claiming that
It's socialism.
Oh, yeah,
It's-
it's socialism, and it can't work.
You know,
So,
let's take your money and let's let the government take care of it.
well, when
You
they
know,
put us on the plantation, in a sense, everybody works for the government doing that.
I look at things, and one of the JMT. Remember, I talked about light, and I look at everything as light and darkness, and order and chaos. God is a God of order.
That's right.
Can he work in chaos? Yes. But when Jesus Christ was on trial and everybody's yelling crucify, you think chaos, chaos. But he was in the exact spot he was supposed to be. When they were nailing his hands on the cross, we got you now. But he was in exact order, exactly where he was supposed to be. So God is a God of order. Satan is an entity of chaos,
That's
darkness. Right. He's always wanted to disrupt your relationships, your families, relationship with your children. So when I look at the political parties, and I look at who wants order and who wants chaos, who wants the disruption of borders, who wants the disruption of marriage norms, of family norms, who wants the disruption of ICE, who wants the disruption of the police, who encourages Antifa. Everything is chaos. They want to break down societal norms. Who wants order? So you can kind of look at the two and say who wants order and who wants chaos. Who's doing the will? No, I can't say the will of God because there's a lot of corruption in that.
Yeah.
But who is more closely working wants
right.
order and who wants to create chaos? And as you look at one party, and everything they do is, we want to disrupt families. We want to disrupt marriage. We want to disrupt societal norms. We want to no borders. We want chaos.
Well, there are some folks who live so much in the present that they can't conceptualize that their party has changed. But when you study American history, parties have always changed. Changed their names, changed their identity, changed their direction. So it's not unusual. We just happen to be living in a time when one major political party is in the process of undergoing major changes, and there's a real battle for the soul of that party, which seems to be already pretty much determined who's going to win in that. But because of this thing about medicine and the cost, I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that finally your profession is getting appreciated, because you are still on the edge of alternative medicine. You're another answer. I mean, you were an answer for my back instead of surgery.
I know that's
There
right.
was a lot of
Oh,
therapy,
gosh.
some young women who knew what they were doing. You had machines to stretch me and to shock me and to all kinds of things. Sure beat having surgery. I had church members, several of them over the years, who had back surgery. They were never the same,
No.
and they were still in pain.
The average person that has spinal surgery, within 5 years, the average, the mean, the norm, it fails. They're right
Well-
back where they started, within 5 years. So we're not talking the exception to the rule, we're talking the rule.
That's right.
And that's microdiscectomy, laminectomies, that's fusions, they all fail. It's a patch at best. What we're trying to do is actually correct the problem. Most times when you go to the medical doctor and you have a back problem, what are you going to walk out with?
Pills.
Muscle relaxers, painkiller, anti-inflammatory. They're not designed to fix anything. They're like earplugs in your ears when the brakes are going out. Yes, you hear the screeching and grinding less, but you're screeching and grinding with ignorant bliss. And as time goes by, you're going to irreparably damage your rotors, and it's going to get worse and worse until they finally get surgery. And we kind of are trying to come in between that gap and try to explain to people that you're taking this medication, you start taking anti-inflammatories. I mean, if you have a headache once every 2 weeks, take an ibuprofen, no big deal. But if you have headaches every day and you're taking that stuff, all the anti-inflammatories you're taking, as we age, we drink less water. It's just a natural part of aging. After 50, we start drinking less. We start becoming dehydrated. Of course, we're going to start developing osteoarthritis. What is the doctor going to give you? Anti-inflammatories, diuretic. It makes you urinate a lot. It gets you. Now we're getting rid of more and more fluids. So this is our sewage system. We drink water in, it creates osmotic pressures. We urinate waste products out. But as we start taking less water in and we start taking diuretics for this anti-inflammatories, now you take that, you're going to increase your chance of Alzheimer's. You take it for 2 years, and you're going to start taking medications for constipation, dry, and this, that, and the other. You think you're getting old. It's not because you're getting old. It's because you're taking that stuff, and it's not doing anything for your actual problem. We're actually trying to get in there, let's restore the function where your body can actually pump away that inflammation, and you can do it naturally and not chemically. And so the medications you're getting, once you take that medication for 2 years, you'll end up taking another medication for the side effects of that one. And all of a sudden it becomes a rolling ball, and you want to talk about some weird stuff, you take a pharmaceutical company's control medicine. They're the ones
That's right.
donating the most money to medical schools, and doctors are being taught how to match a symptom with a pill. And 90% of the time, that pill doesn't do anything for the problem. It does everything for the symptom, because then if it did something for the problem, you wouldn't have to take the pills. So if at age 50, you start developing, 60, you start developing high blood pressure, you take one medication, and between you and your insurance costs $250 a month. Well, that pharmaceutical company is going to make $1 million off you in a lifetime, $250,000. You take few more years, you end up taking 3, 4, 5 medications. The money is, you add that among all the Americans in this country, and you add that money, it's filthy money. It's outrageous amounts of money.
Tremendous amount.
And, you know, I'm one of those weird guys who would say, you know, if somebody ever did come up with a cure for cancer, somebody would pay them $1 billion, because that industry is huge, you know, collecting monies and all the things. So I think, you know, you hear all the politics and all the corruption in it. I think that goes down into all these other entities too.
Well,
And
the
they just-
time has come when I believe thinking people are going to become more alternative-minded with all this stuff about opioids, painkillers, you know, that's going on and on and on. Also, the truth is coming out about the overuse of antibiotics.
Oh, yeah.
So that leads me into a good spot for a commercial that I'll do, because I didn't forewarn Matt. But it's a commercial for naturalsolutionstore.bz. Naturalsolutionstore.bz. Natural Solution Store has 45 or more natural products in their inventory, in their catalog. Every one of them you can read about what they are good for. They're all natural. They're all well tested. And we don't give any medical advice about this, but the thinking person is going to finally, a light's going to come on, hopefully the right light, that if it is true that honey is good for you, especially, you know, if it comes from bees in your area to help you with allergies, that's a pretty natural thing. My old uncle, when he was 80 years old, was leading Nancy and myself on a hike through the woods to go see the land where my mom grew up. And he stopped by this dead bush. It was in the month of February in North Missouri. He broke off a little twig. He said, chew on that. I chewed on it. He said, what's it taste like? I said, it tastes like aspirin. He said, yeah, that's where they get aspirin. He said, the Indians, he called them Indians, I call them Native Americans, he said, that's what they used when they had a toothache. They grabbed that twig and they would chew on it and rub it around on their gums. That's pretty natural. Because of the cost of medicine, because medicine, I believe, as we know it today, is failing to teach anything about natural solutions, but instead it's all concocted in a laboratory, high profit items. I believe that a great many American people are wakening up, and more are going to wake up to places like Natural Solution Store. I urge you, listener, friend, watcher, you and tell others, tell a friend, check out naturalsolutionstore.bz for things that'll be good for your heart. Now, you can just take it that I told you. There's CoQ10, study it. You have a computer, go online, study about it. Study about the omegas. Study about them. Study about aronia. Study about all those things.
Ashwagandha.
And ashwagandha, study about it. See if it, you just, with the way things are in this country, one of these days it may be worse than standing in line to see the medical doctor. But we have guys like Dr. Philip Lloyd, he's on the edge there. He's got a medical doctor on his staff. He happens to be a chiropractor. He has physical therapists on his staff. They are certified, qualified. We're going to be looking more and more to this outer edge and get away from this hardcore. That's my point. So check it out, naturalsolutionstore.bz. Start doing something for yourself ahead of a major need. But periodically, won't hurt a thing to be supportive of Trunk or Treat. And remember, Cherry Health Center, an exam and 2 x-rays for a $5 donation. I mean, even if some of you guys, you wonder if you have a brain, find out for $5, okay? That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and that's not this Saturday, but it's next Saturday.
Yeah, next Saturday.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
5 to 7. So a safe place to bring your kids and get a bunch of candy, jump in a bounce house, see the superheroes, meet a couple of police officers, and get a hot dog and have some fun. And help Rare Breed.
It will be a great time. It will be a happy time to go along with the happy hour that we're experiencing still. We've got about 5 minutes. I want to come back to your most recent hike. When you talk about that, it sounds like you climbed some pretty high elevation places and all that.
Yep.
And I think about Mount Pilot down in Iron County. How'd your body hold up, 55-year-old, double nickel?
Yeah, well, the funny thing, everything's dehydrated, and the night before I left, I had a meal from last year of Chili Mac, and I had a new system that I was using to hydrate, and I thought, well, I'm just going to eat this and see how this thing hydrates it well and how I'm going to do it. And so that's what I did. Well, I got sick as a dog.
Oh.
This is the night before I was leaving. And so, I mean, it came out everywhere it could come out. You know what I'm saying? And I'm one of those guys that if I throw up, I'm down. And it happens once a decade. And I was down. And so when we got to Little Yosemite Valley, it was 95 degrees, hot. And the first 2 days climbing up those mountains, I thought I was going to die. But about the third day, I was good. But I thought it was the heat, but it was because I was just, I was recovering from that getting sick. But for 2 days, I thought, God's not behind this.
Well, confession is good for the soul.
But after that, I did good. In fact, they called me Speedy. Different people called me Speedy Gonzalez and Lightning, just because. I mean, I motored up those mountains and I kind of do it in a good pace, and so I do real well. And anybody ever wants to do that, I think the average person could do it. I mean, the average person, you'll lose 15 pounds within 20 days. You'll lose. You can't hike for 5 to 7 hours a day and not lose weight. And if you start out the way you are, within 5 days, you'll be in shape. I mean, I don't care what you look like now, but in 5 days, you're going to be in shape.
Would
Kind of like high school basketball. You remember when you go high school basketball?
Uh-huh.
Within 2 weeks, you went from nothing to being in shape because that guy ran your tail off, and for those first 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you were like a monster, and this trail will do that same thing to you.
Back in about 1960, I was pastor of a church in St. Joe, and St. Joseph, Missouri, and we only had 8 retired people in the church. They were mostly middle-aged people, but I started a young married couples class, and by the way, they still have some meetings, and they're still the couples class. They stopped saying they're the young married couples class. One of them is my first secretary, Shirley Simpson, watching us. And but anyway, we put together a program to challenge these middle-aged guys to basketball at the local community center. And they accepted. We had quite an audience. Well, we only had about 2 plays that had happened, and it was huddle time for the old guys, your age, and a little younger, like 40 to 55.
Did you just call me old?
I remember when. So I went running out on the court with a stethoscope, and I'm listening to these guys. And one of the 8 retired people was an older lady who was there, and she was worried. She thought that those men were really in bad shape, which they were. I mean, we mopped up the floor with those older guys, big time. So we're feeling pretty good. And so here's these young guys who were junior college basketball players who were part of the church. They challenged us. And we said, sure. So we had another basketball game. I made a jump shot from a three-point range, swish, and went to the other end of the court, and the other guy got the rebound, the other team, and he's headed for his goal, and I'm running hard to go up and block that shot. And I went up and I blocked it, and I came down, and everything was going black, round and round and round. I almost passed out from overexertion. All right, we have just a few seconds, and I must tell you, it has been a happy hour. Started off with hard news, and then we got into inspiration. We got into information. And I want to tell you, I admire what Dr. Phil is doing. I know you admire it. Remember, let's be supportive of this on October the 26th, and follow it up by being supportive of what Acts Ministry is doing on the 28th and 29th with the telethon. For now, thank you very much. See you next Friday.